Hi, my name is Ben Dietrich. I teach grade 3 to 6 instrumental music at an international school in Bangkok, Thailand. I focus my research action project on my grade 6 elective class. To give a brief background, this is a new class that has never before existed at this school, so there are currently only 4 students with an expectation that it grows next year to include grade 6 and 7. These learners are very bright and well adjusted, but the skill level, focus, and learning styles of each are quite varied and unique to each student, more than I have experienced in the last 10 years. While they are learning and performing at a polished level appropriate for their age and experience, it seems as though more should have been able to be accomplished this semester. This action research is entitled Music in Motion, an exploration of learning preferences in middle school orchestra students with diverse learning profiles. It attempts to understand more deeply each student's individual needs and explores ideas to maximize success next semester and beyond. The topic of this research examines learning preferences, skill perceptions, and multisensory instruction among a small group of diverse middle school music students. The purpose of the study was to gather data about how middle school students learn best and who represent a range of learning needs and diverse learning profiles. How they learn best, what they identify as their musical strengths and weaknesses, and how they perceive movement-based instructional strategies. Rather than testing a specific intervention, this study focused on listening to students' perspectives so that I can make more informed decisions about how to support their learning in the future. By collecting these student perspectives, the goal was to gain insight into how different types of learners engage with music and to better tailor instruction to support these learning differences in an orchestra setting. The following research questions, guided the direction of this exploratory study. The first question focuses on understanding how students that exhibit signs of ADHD and dyslexia describe the ways they learn best in the orchestra classroom. This includes preferences for visual, auditory, kinesthetic, or movement-based approaches. The second question examines the musical strengths and challenges students identify for themselves. By listening to their self-perceptions, I can better understand how learning needs to differ across the students and how instructional strategies might support those differences. The third question asks students' view of movement-based and multisensory instructional strategies in relation to their intention, engagement, and musical understanding. This helps clarify whether these types of strategies feel supportive and motivating or unhelpful from the students' perspectives. Together, these questions help build a clearer picture of what young musicians may need in order to be successful and engaged learners in the orchestra setting. This research, I believe, is important because diverse learners benefit from instructional approaches that engage multiple senses, support attention, and make music learning more accessible, equitable, and effective. Traditional approaches to teaching, note reading, and performance skills may not fully support students who benefit from multisensory reinforcement or physical engagement. By studying strategies that activate multiple senses and incorporate purposeful movement, this research aims to identify effective practices that help all students achieve greater musical accuracy, remain focused, and experience more meaningful engagement in the orchestra classroom. Additionally, this may even include those with learning challenges such as ADHD or dyslexia. For this study, I used a mixed methods exploratory design type. Students completed a student-friendly questionnaire developed to collect both quantitative and qualitative data regarding their learning preferences, musical strengths and weaknesses, and perceptions of movement-based instruction. The design used Likert statements and open-ended questions. I hoped to receive a more comprehensive understanding of how students experience and respond to various forms of instruction within the orchestra setting. But rather than implementing an intervention, I focused on gathering student data to inform future instructional decisions. I constantly observe and tweak subtle learning approaches for each individual, but this was a chance for students to reflect and communicate their thoughts and feelings back to me. The study involved only 4 middle school string students from a grade 6 orchestra class, consisting of 3 violin players and 1 cello player. These students represented a range of learning needs and performance aptitudes, including some with possible characteristics of ADHD or dyslexia. The study occurred in a middle school music classroom that regularly sees grade 6 string students. Instruction took place in a small group rehearsal setting. A paper questionnaire was given to 4 students to complete over 2 class periods within the same week. The process involved explaining the purpose of the survey, reviewing each question with students, and ensuring they understood that their responses would be confidential and used to improve instruction. Students had about 15 minutes each class to complete by hand. This ensured that they took their time, reviewed answers on different days, and expanded details or specific information. Since it was all handwritten with several open-ended questions, they were instructed to take as much time as they needed, since I did not want the paper to go home and get lost. To analyze the quantitative data, I reviewed all numerical survey responses and calculated the ratings for each item, looking for similarities and differences across students. I compared students' scores on learning preferences, musical strengths and weaknesses, and perceptions of movement-based instruction in order to identify overall patterns. For the qualitative data, I coded the open-ended responses by looking for repeated words, ideas, and themes that appeared across the reflections. I grouped these themes into categories related to learning experiences, preferences, attention, engagement, confidence, and their experiences with movement-based or multisensory instruction. This combined analytic approach helped create a fuller picture of how diverse learners understand, how they themselves, learners, understands their needs. Findings and results. The survey results revealed clear differences in how middle school orchestra students with diverse learning needs experience movement-based and multisensory instruction. Quantitatively, scores varied widely on items related to movement, helping attention, alertness, enjoyment, and learning. Composite scores showed a clear spread. 2 students showed moderate benefit, 1 student reported minimal benefit, and 1 student indicated that movement significantly improved their alertness and enjoyment. More on this later when I show the tables. Qualitative data also showed that students responded very differently to movement-based learning. Comments indicated that movement helped some students, quote, stay awake, feel the beat better, or stay focused. Others noted that they preferred more traditional stationary instruction. For example, while Matt, Saya, and Namo often found movement distracting, both Matt and Saya also found it helpful for rhythm. Another trend revealed a collective enjoyment of playing together. Each student said that having friends in class made the experience more enjoyable and served an important role in motivation. To add even more context, each student identified clear personal and group goals, such as improved note reading, playing through without stopping, or bow technique. Half the class struggled with note reading in some capacity. This challenge was obvious for Nova and Saya, whose weak reading comprehensions differed in specific ways. Nova struggled to smoothly identify and read individual notes, while Saya was slow to identify key signatures. Everyone had confidence in reading rhythms, especially when paired with movement. Together, these findings suggest that movement-based strategies are helpful for many students, but not all students benefit in the same way or to the same degree. Table 1 shows several meaningful patterns across the 5 survey categories that include attitudes and motivation, multisensory learning, note rhythm comprehension, ensemble lesson experience, and attention and participation. Students demonstrated the strongest agreement in note and rhythm comprehension, with a group mean of 4.0, although Nova rated note reading a low 2, suggesting that students generally feel confident reading notes and rhythms or believe that these areas improve with multisensory support. The next highest category was ensemble and lesson experience, with a mean of 3.5, where students reported positive perceptions of how lessons were instructed and structured and how they felt during group learning. Scores for multisensory learning also fell above the median, with a mean of 3.29. This indicates that, on average, students responded positively to visual, auditory, and kinesthetic approaches, although their individual ratings varied. Attitudes and motivation averaged 3.13, showing generally favorable but less consistent feelings about their motivation and enjoyment. The lowest category was attention and participation, with a mean of 2.75. This was obvious to me before this survey even happened, and it's interesting that this did turn out to be the lowest category of agreement. This suggests that staying focused and consistently participating remained a challenge for several students, even when movement or multisensory elements were present. Individual differences were notable. For example, Nova scored highest in attention-related areas while Matt scored lower, which highlights the diverse learning needs present in the group. Overall, the patterns indicate that while students feel relatively confident in comprehension skills and enjoy ensemble learning, attention and participation remain areas of need, and multisensory or movement-based approaches may offer uneven support depending on the learner. There are also results relating directly to movement. The table and bar graph show the same data, which is each student's ratings on 4 movement-related items, C3, F3, F4, and F7, along with their composite movement score. The movement items are: movement helps rhythm, movement helps attention, movement helps alertness, and movement makes class fun, along with a composite score. Higher numbers indicate stronger agreement that movement is helpful or enjoyable. The movement-related items reveal that students had very different reactions to movement-based learning. Overall, movement appears to be a polarizing instructional strategy. Matt, who gave 1.75, rated movement consistently low and described it as overstimulating or distracting when not being used to help understand rhythm. Namo, with a 2.0, also showed low approval, indicating that movement does not generally support his learning. In contrast, Nova 3.0 rated movement highly for enjoyment and alertness, though not for improving attention. Saya and Matt strongly agree that movement helps with rhythm understanding, scoring 5 and 4 respectively, but they otherwise found movement unhelpful. Overall, these results suggest that students benefit more from visual and auditory strategies than from movement-based strategies. This pattern aligns with findings in prior research that show that if multisensory learning is used, it is most effective when it supports clarity and cognitive processing rather than overstimulation. This is really personal to me because perhaps as their teacher, I need to be more clear and intentional with very narrow and specific movement-based activities, because the other research shows it very much can be beneficial in the music classroom. Conclusions. Overall, this study indicates that multisensory and movement-based instructional strategies do hold meaningful potential for supporting diverse learners in the middle school orchestra setting. The questionnaire data showed that students differ widely in how they learn best and in how they perceive their musical strengths and challenges, but movement-based strategies were generally viewed positively, especially for improving rhythm, increasing alertness, and making class more enjoyable. Although not all students rated these strategies equally, the composite scores demonstrate that movement can play an important role in sustaining attention and engagement for many learners, particularly those who may struggle with focus or decoding musical information through traditional methods. These findings reinforce the importance of designing flexible, multimodal instruction that allows different types of learners to access musical concepts more effectively, even those with possible characteristics of ADHD, dyslexia, or other learning differences. The study provides strong justification for continuing to explore movement integrated multisensory teaching as a pathway toward more inclusive and engaging orchestra learning environments. The study had several limitations that shape how the results should be interpreted. First, the sample size of only 4 students was very small, too small, which means the findings cannot be generalized beyond this particular group. Additionally, all data came from student self-reports, which can be influenced by factors such as mood, self-perception, or misunderstanding of items. Because the questionnaire was designed to be student-friendly and accessible, the responses may not fully capture the complexity of specific learning differences such as ADHD or dyslexia. Another limitation is that the study did not include a teaching intervention or a comparison group, so the results reflect student perceptions rather than demonstrated behavioral or academic changes. At the beginning of this project, it was my intention to do more of a classroom-based experiment with this, but time constraints morphed this survey into what it is today. Finally, this study took place over the course of 2 orchestra classes within a unique learning environment, meaning that their answers may not directly translate directly to different settings or age groups. New design. If this study were conducted again, I would strengthen the design by including more students and possibly multiple classes to increase the validity of the findings. I would also supplement the questionnaire with classroom observation, teacher notes, or performance assessments so that student self-reported data could be compared to actual behaviors and musical outcomes. Another major improvement would be adding a clear instructional intervention using multisensory and movement-based strategies over several weeks, followed by pre- and post-data collection to measure change more directly. In addition, refining the questionnaire to include more targeted items about attention, working memory, note reading, and sensory preferences would provide deeper insight, especially for students with learning differences. These changes would help produce a more rigorous, comprehensive understanding of how these strategies truly impact diverse orchestra learners. In closing, it is my hope that by understanding how our diverse students experience music, we can build a thriving environment where every musician has a chance to shine in the classroom, on the stage, and in their personal lives. Thank you for listening, and happy music making.